Thumbs up. Awesome. Well, welcome to the fiscal year 2027 Budget Committee season. I like calling it a season because it feels very seasonally appropriate. I'm technically chair until we do another vote and decide who we want to have chair. So that's why that's how I'm kicking it off right now. I sent one email just preliminarily, letting everyone know, well, just to say hello and, just for highlights for today. But when we'll start with a chair vote, and then we'll talk about the rules of communication engagement for each of these sessions. And hello. And then Audra will take us through the town management's presentation. So Welcome. How's everybody? Good.
Fine.
Good.
Can I say something?
Oh, sure.
For the wonderful gift of the budget binder.
I'd like to nominate Sarah for chair this year.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Want to be chair again, Sarah?
Third.
I'm happy to be chair again, but I'm also I'm 100% happy to be chair, but I also recognize that if anyone else wants to be, I'm also happy to share, but I'm happy to do it.
I'd like to go on the record as saying you do a really good job.
Okay.
And so if you're willing to do it, I want you to do it.
Okay. Is any other discussion? See if we're so official already. Okay. Just so online, if we have to call it out by name, if they're in favor, or we do it by versus. Okay. So if you're present in the room, all in favor of me being chair. And then online, if you want to, Deb,
Yes, affirmative. Thank you for doing that.
Courtney.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody opposed? No. Any abstained? All right. Thanks. Appreciate the vote of confidence.
Is anyone else missing besides Marina?
We're missing
Marina, Pete Orn,
Pete.
and
Jeff is here, so we're meeting Pete and Marina. Yeah.
Okay.
But we have more than a quorum, so. Okay. Well,
You get all those special sheets, like.
What's that?
Stuff like that.
Oh, they're all in there. So in the binders, again, we're just all getting them. So you'll see, I'm not going to take us through the whole thing because I'm also just seeing it. We'll reserve the cover note and stuff for when Audra works. I think let's just spend a couple of minutes just talking about rules of communication and engagement, if everyone's okay with that. I know I wasn't able to attend the collaborative pre-meeting with the select board and the budget committee, but I did meet with Audra, and it sounds like there is some takeaway that obviously we want the select board here, and they're very much, part of our meetings, also recognizing that when we are holding our sessions and having presentations from the department heads, we want to honor and allow the budget committee members the greatest allocation of time to ask questions of those department heads and get the kind of clarification that we need. But I also know that sometimes you can over-engineer stuff so much to the point that it becomes too limiting. And so if everybody is in agreement, obviously we want the select board, we want to be able to obviously ask questions of the select board. We want the ability to have the select board ask questions of the department heads with the caveat that if discussions start to go kind of, too granular, that we want to I will be redirecting just to make sure that we are broadening it to the budget committee. So I just wanted to get anyone's feedback on that and perspective. Hopes.
Right.
You got to use your microphone, whichever one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was happy for that clarification
Okay.
because that was sort of fuzzy at the end of the last meeting.
Yeah. I think we kind of went a little bit. I think there's too much, we don't want to be so, we don't want to come to the end of budget season and then be hearing perspectives and viewpoints of the select board that would have been really valuable to our discussion. So I think integrated enough, but recognizing that the majority of the communication and conversation and discussion should be held by the budget committee. Any concerns or? Okay. Okay. The other just communication point of business is because we are now in session, it's also really important that any request that anyone on the budget committee has filters through me. Again, I'm not the holder or, or bottleneck of things, but I want to make sure that requests that were being made to the town office, to various entities kind of filter through me. And then I also want to make sure that whatever is requested is also disseminated to the entire budget committee and that the select board is copied on those. So I think it's worked well in the past. I don't feel like there's been any holdup of requests, but I just want to put it out to the floor, make sure everybody feels comfortable with that. Go on once. Go.
I do have one question.
Okay, hold on, go ahead.
Strictly about the schedule, because the original email we got had a lot of the times at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock. This sheet says 6 o'clock. Can we verify which is which so we don't show up a half an hour late?
Yes. So when we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, the committee talked about 6 o'clock start like you did last year.
Okay.
And I think, I think both the schedule, the start time, when you want to stop are all things that you should talk about tonight in the beginning, just to, kind of figure out what your norm is going to be for each meeting.
Sure, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, last year, in the beginning, our meeting started at 6:30 and they ran too late.
Yeah.
Got it.
So we moved it back to 6 o'clock, so we stopped at 8 and
Right.
it worked.
Yeah. And
No,
we're,
it's fine with me. I just wanted to know which was which. 6 o'clock is fine with me. And that's the way it is here, these, except
Yeah.
for the select board meetings.
is anybody not amenable to having a 6 o'clock start time? Okay. And we also, as we know, the budget, we're going to do our best. As always, it tends to snowball in terms of, we want to be mindful of the time of the department heads and ourselves. So when we look next at kind of how this is laid out, I also said in my email, I have some recommendations based on some of the areas where I think we will need more thoughtful time to talk about stuff. We want to just make sure that, we start earlier and really try not to end too late, but that we're not scrambling at the end to get through a chunk of it. So, okay. So 6 to 8 it is. And, we will do our best to conclude at that time. Okay. So Audra, before we do any discussion about changes to or proposed changes to kind of how we look at the schedule, including today, if we get through Audra's presentation, or when we get through Audra's presentation, we might even try to tackle the first round of budgets. But do you want to, what works best? Do you want to give your overview and
Yeah,
do that.
maybe, and you might want to talk a few housekeeping items, to bring forward some of the discussion from the last meeting. Because I'm looking through my notes and there was a desire to spend more time on revenues and things like fees for service, and just everybody having a clearer picture of, the policy discussions and decisions around departments that have fees for services and, how that integrates with the budget.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one thing that was brought up. So I just, I want to make sure, because we also talked about kind of going through the schedule and making sure that, I know things have to be a little bit flexible, but that we're carving out time on the things that are most important and that everybody feels like, we really need to focus on.
Thank you. You just triggered my memory.
Right.
Thank you. She's like, sounds like, so one of
That's
the
why
things.
there's more than one of us, right?
Exactly. So one of the things that in line with what Audra is saying, I have felt, and it sounds like it's come up from others that when we push the revenues and, the capital projects till the end, there often are things that are relevant to the department discussions that we've already had or would have been nice to have be part of the conversation. So one thing that I'm proposing is that as we go through each of the department presentations, that we bring with it the revenue capital projects and those components and look and vote on those as we go through. So we have an opportunity to just talk about them, look at them and not be looking back to try to remember. I don't know if does that require an official vote or I tend to go, does anybody opposed to that approach? No? Okay. So then that'll obviously be one change reflected in the revised schedule. And then,
Sarah,
go
I have
ahead,
a-
Deb.
Yeah, I have a process question, and I think Marina raised it at the pre-budget committee meeting, which is that we hear from a department head, and then we're asked to vote on that budget right then and there, which can sometimes feel sort of out of context to the whole larger budget. We're asked to approve it on the spot without kind of a bigger picture. Is there any flexibility in that scheduling of approval?
I think absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
However you all decide to do it is how you can go about that approval
Yeah.
process.
So let's open it up. So do you want to give a recommendation or we can have a discussion of what you think might, work better?
I mean, at the end of a night after we've heard from 3, 4, or 5 departments, or is it cumulative? We look at everything and then we decide, but it just felt, it didn't feel right to be deciding in that moment.
Matt's got his hand up. Go ahead.
Is it possible to just get the presentations in advance at some level and have our questions ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Can everybody hear Matt's question online?
Yeah.
Yeah. Courtney, go ahead.
I kind of wanted to piggyback on what Deborah was saying. One of the things that I really don't enjoy doing, and I'm fine with doing it, but is literally talking about departments when the department heads are there, specifically related to, if there's things that we want to cut or we think that we would like to, move somewhere or another. It just feels kind of awkward because they're sitting right there in front of us. And you're like, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but these are my feelings about this, et cetera. So I guess it kind of piggybacks on that, where it's like Matt had said, we do that and then later vote on the whatever.
Yeah.
But-
Let me make one quick comment and then Karen, you can go. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking about, and not in terms of like, I'm with you, Deb, that just it feels kind of like rapid fire sometimes, where there's even maybe not enough time for some reflection and, conversation. I just want to also make sure that we know that during those votes, there are often times for additional discussion that sometimes we want to get feedback from department heads for clarification. So I also just want to make sure that when we're voting, we have access to and the ability to ask those discussion questions before we have a final vote. Go ahead, Karen.
Trying to collect my
You gotta
thoughts.
use the,
The only problem I have is on this, I think we should be voting on each item as it comes through, because that way the select board they have a chance anyway to have another presentation by the department head to change that number. So if we do it, rather than doing it collectively, just do it one by one like we traditionally always have. I don't know, I have never heard from any of the department heads that they feel uncomfortable with the vote being taken while they were sitting right there. But I would prefer that we keep it the way we always have.
One alternative just to put out there is what we could potentially begin each of our next sessions with votes on the budgets that we had discussed in the meeting prior. I'm just throwing it out there. I haven't even really thought it entirely through myself, but I'm wondering if there, because then potentially if there are questions that come up between that session or that need clarification, it's just one, or we hold it for the, like, towards the end of that evening. That's another thought.
So you're saying we can go back to the discussion we had previously, even though we voted it up or down, and rediscuss it? Is that what you're saying?
For which vote are you saying?
I was saying our vote. If there's more information that came
Oh.
up after we made our vote, are you saying you
I
be willing to hear again for clarification at the next meeting?
I was more proposing that if we wanted a gap between, and I'm saying it and questioning it myself. So I
There's
don't
an
want
idea. She's
I'm
brainstorming.
I'm just putting the idea out that if we wanted a break, if we
There was
concluded,
no vote at the end of the meeting.
if we didn't do
We did
votes at
vote
the
end of
end,
the meeting.
but at
and
the
vote
start
at
of our next
beginning of the
meeting, we
next
would do
meeting.
votes for the budgets that we would start
Vote at the end of the meeting, vote at the
beginning of the next and
So
start.
Time to digest, time to think about it at home, and then say.
Ooh.
And then we'd kick it off with voting on the budgets
That's
that we
the
had covered.
brainstorm.
And at the beginning of the next meeting, we can discuss it again or just straight up vote?
I mean, every,
That's good clarification.
yeah.
Good question.
Audra, are there any
We're making it up.
consequences to the
making it
department
up.
heads not knowing that night whether their budget is approved? Do you think that's a negative?
No, I mean, they're going to find out anyway. This is, all about how you can all make the best decision where you feel you've been
Yeah.
best informed and
Yeah.
are comfortable with it.
And ultimately, until we conclude the budget committee's work, any of the given budgets can be reevaluated and brought up again for a revised vote. So we're not real, we're not actually done until we approve whatever that final number is. So I think it's more a question of having fresh information in our minds, having active discussion, having, again, because if you're like me, you can have all sorts of numbers, going, and so being able to be efficient and effective without, again, to your point, not feeling like you're not sharing your input based on the department heads. Go ahead, Mark.
The one thing I was going to say, by waiting till the beginning of the next session to have the vote, if we start to rediscuss it all over again, we'll run
Yeah.
our time
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
And that can be a problem.
And like I said, that was my recommendation. I've already talked myself out of that because I just think it's just too, I do that a lot. So,
That's fine.
yeah.
I prefer to keep it the way we always have and vote piece by piece by piece because it's fresh in my mind
Yeah.
and I know what I've heard and I'm not going to confuse it with somebody else's presentation.
Yeah. Were there other things that were brought up, Audra, during?
So I think one of the big takeaways was, we've got a pretty experienced budget committee. I don't think there's one person on this budget committee that hasn't been on it for at least a year, if not, a lot of people have been on for a long time. So I think there was a real desire to really focus on the most consequential areas of the budget, where there's the most change and, deal with the sort of the biggest issues first and not as much time on like the whole enchilada type presentation that we have been doing in the past, where every single department gives the whole overview of who they are and what they do. So I think that was good feedback because I think that we could make the process much more focused on the most important budgetary decisions that need to be made instead of, some years more education is required. I just think that this year, you're all experienced enough that you can kind of get to the heart of it quicker.
And Deb, like I said, having sat in this room over the years, there is a personal, it's all personal because this is all our town and the services. So I'm also recognizing that, yes, that it's, that it can be challenging. So has it ever been done any other way in terms of it being,
There are occasions where, there'll be a big discussion or things get pinched because of time. And so, the budget committee will table a vote and then come back to it at another meeting,
Yeah.
or something changes. And
Yeah.
so you have to come back to it again for whatever reason. So, there's some level of flexibility about how you vote. So, even if the consensus coming out of it is you want to kind of keep it how it is, just knowing that things could change as we go through this, and there might be an appropriate time to table a vote and then come back to it at the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yep.
Because it always ends up going a little differently than everybody plans from the beginning.
Yeah. And then we can, we could put it to vote if we want, or we could say, let's walk into it, maintaining the process that we've had. And then we can kind of come back as a group and discuss if we want to formally modify it. Are you comfortable with that, Courtney and Deb? And I'll go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, separately, I'm not talking about when should we vote? Should we do it in front of them? Do we have to separately talk about getting materials at a specific date prior to their session? Is that something we can put in there and vote on? I might as well make that separate because I don't want it to get mixed up in this part. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, knowing and hearing from Audra that we can table something and come back to it, revisit it. Because I don't think we did that, and I was not aware that that was really an option, so.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we'll maintain our voting as we have it, recognizing that if anything comes up where that does not work well for the group, then we'll talk about it. Then circling back to Matt, and the timing. So yes, I am all in favor based on the years of experience that we've had, and also want to be as efficient and maintaining most of our time to really asking the questions and focusing on the areas of change and what has been and what will be. What can we expect in terms of how early we can get the presentations and materials? I mean, I know that we've got our binders, but I feel like there's often.
Yeah, there's usually supplementary stuff. So, I think that if we can get it to you the Monday before your Thursday meeting, would that give you all enough time to look over
Yeah,
everything and
that'd be
get
awesome.
questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
No, I think that benefits to getting as much information as we can prior to that, and 48 hours is, plus is certainly enough time.
Awesome. That will be a huge help. And I think, again, as we have our presentations, sometimes I repeat myself, just really honing in and focusing on what are the budget-related questions and
One quick more.
Go ahead.
Is there something we can put on there? What would be the protocol if we do not receive it at that time? Do we push the vote for them to the next section? How do you want to do that?
That's a good question. So I would say if it's promised on Monday, we meet on Thursday. I'd say if by the end of Tuesday, because if we gave 48 hours, right?
I mean, if we can just get, whatever minimum amount of time,
Yeah,
is it, if you want, whatever the teams need to self-manage, the delivery of that is fine. But
Yeah.
if it's not arrived within 24 to 36 hours ahead of time, that we have.
then we would postpone it. Does everybody else agree? Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Anything online before?
Another thing I'd like to bring up from the pre-meeting, and that's something that Peter raised, which is having a budgetary goal. And I know Audra has one in her presentation, but I didn't want to just kind of let it sort of his suggestion that we have a goal. He recommended the Social Security rate of 2.9% or something, but do we want to discuss that, or do we just want to move on?
I mean, go ahead, Matt. Yeah, I mean, again, because I was not in that earlier discussion. My preference would be to kick off with the presentation that Audra does have and kind of solidifying those pieces. And then again, there's no time limit on us. We're not in the thick of it yet of establishing that goal. So I would like to hear what the town management priorities are and what's being set before us before we pick what that goal is. If that would be my preference, but do others have a perspective? Are you comfortable with that, Deb?
I am. I just didn't feel last year like we had a goal.
Yeah.
It was just kind of, we just kind of moved along. So
Okay.
I'm sort of a goal-oriented person, so
I get
it's helpful. And
Yeah.
maybe we want to stick with Audra's goal, but, have some sort of framework that we're
Yeah.
working on, because I think it can be all requests are good requests, and
Yeah.
you just kind of flow with it.
Yeah, no, I'm in favor of, like I said, I think if we can hear what the presentation is, kind of rework how we're going to move and approach, each of the weeks. And then we can even through email communication kind of think about and see ahead of time if we want, if there's another stated goal that we want to have for the session. Okay.
And I liked it too that Deb, you were reflecting on, and was restated by you, Sarah, that at the end we can review anything and the whole thing, each budget, and keep that in context. If we tabled or binned something, that this is something we want to reconsider, and then we look at the increase versus cost of living increase or whatever it was. So if Audra comes forward with, I'm going to make up numbers, a 5.5% increase, cost of living is 2.5%, then we have that in the back of our minds. We get through it all and we're weighing that. And we come to the end and go, we really need to look at this because it just expanded out too much. Just try to hold our feet to the fire a little bit.
I'm all about accountability. So, okay. Anything else before we turn it over to Audra for our orientation?
Were you going to discuss the timing, Sarah, too? Do we have to vote on that, like on days? I mean, I know there's going to be, I'm sure, big, like you said, big ticket items that are going to be coming up. And those are, 2 hours is really enough time.
Yeah, what I want to do is if we have Audra take us through, because I think I haven't seen Audra's presentation, but I'm imagining in Audra's presentation, there's going to be some highlights of areas within the budget that we're going to want to look at and potentially spend more time on. So once we can hear that, then we can turn our attention to the schedule and then shift accordingly.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for agreeing to do this once again. It's hard work. It's really important work. It makes for a very exciting March, which is a rough month to be in Maine. So does everybody know who everyone is around the table, or introductions necessary this year? Or is everybody comfortable that they know who their neighbors are and who's on the committee?
Comfortable.
Great.
I'm fine.
All right, we did the election of the chair process, rule changes, all of that. So, all right. Any rules of order stuff before I skip over this as well? And how questions are asked and how you return to votes, and all good? We feel like we kind of dispatched of that? Yeah. Great. All right, so just like a little bit process, folks in the room are familiar with this. So, you'll see two budgets in this binder. One is the department head requests, and then the version that I'm proposing to all of you that you'll be reviewing. So that is just sort of the very first step in the process. Then, it goes to all of you to make your recommendation. The select board deliberates over the recommendation that you provided, and then ultimately it goes to voters. So, this really belongs to everybody. It isn't the department head budget. It isn't my budget. It isn't your budget of the select board. It's like a iterative effort that really requires everybody's input. So we've talked about this before. The wonderful thing about a budget committee is you're not a finance committee, so you don't have to have skills and understanding sort of the deeper, darker corners of our bookkeeping or any of that. This is really getting community members to give input on levels of service and the value that you feel is appropriate to pay for those services. So, looking at all the sort of services that we provide and saying, this is appropriate, it meets the needs, this doesn't for whatever reason, and then making those adjustments, I see as the most important role that the budget committee plays on an annual basis. And also setting us up for, future discussions about what's important, what we value. So for example, the direction we went in with the fire and the EMS department, a lot of that kind of started out of a budget committee discussion. I think it was back in FY19, so pre-pandemic, that far back, there were budget committee members who were pretty shocked to find out that we didn't have a 24/7 fire department and that we had no ambulances responding from the public safety building. So, that kind of the budget committee developing that sort of level of awareness about what services Camden provided and how it met or didn't meet their expectations can set the stage for, bigger changes to come. So I think that that's really important for all of you to consider, is that, maybe there are things that you think need to be accomplished, but can't possibly be done in this budget year. This is a great time to bring up some of those, potentially bigger changes that can start being worked on in future budget years. So it's not just looking at this year, but also kind of keeping an eye to the future and what we need to set ourselves up for. So, the budget is really, for me, the single most, important thing that we do every year, because it's really the major guiding policy document that we use to set out our planning for the year ahead. So, it's really what services we provide, the extent to which we provide them, and how they're funded. And this has an impact on everybody in town. So it's really fundamental to everything we do, and it's a really important process. And that's why, we put so much emphasis on it. And March Madness, Budget Committee Madness is so important. And, it serves as a lot of different functions. So, an accounting document, we use the budget to record and track our revenues and expenditures. I use it for management purposes. It reminds me of, who can spend money on what for what purposes. Also with decision-making, anything that goes to the select board, sort of the first thing that they're concerned with is, if there's an appropriation attached to it, is have we budgeted for it or haven't we? And they have to make different decisions accordingly. And also, it's really important for communication. So explaining to the public what we do, how we do it, and the extent to which we do it. My department heads are constantly getting requests for, different services, and they have to be able to point back to the budget and say, this is something that we can do because it's funded, or it's something that we can't do because we don't have funding for it. So just want to, again, emphasize how important you all are in helping us understand, the values of the community. So you're put on this committee to speak on behalf of the community. You have friends that live here, family members, you speak to people. That's all really important for bringing into this, is your understanding of, your fellow citizens and what it is that they see as the, the goals for the town or desires for services. And also looking at balancing our ability to be able to pay for these services. So, I think one of the major themes of this year is that, everybody is incredibly price sensitive, affordability across all aspects of life is getting to be more and more challenging. And, we really were sensitive to that when we were developing this budget, because we understand in our own lives that, it's getting more and more difficult. So, we don't want to compound that through this process. But it's also looking at, this is part of implementing policy. So if there are things that are important to achieve or they're critical for whatever reason, we do have to attend to them in some way. So it's balancing, all those sort of competing priorities of, making sure that we're taking care of our obligations and providing the level of services that people desire, also being sensitive to, affordability concerns and price increases and all of that. And throughout this process, the input that you get from talking to people in the community, I think is really helpful in enriching all the discussion that we have. And also, inviting people to come in and talk to you all. So I think that was another I'm remembering now another really important point that came out of the meeting that the Budget Committee and the Select Board had a couple weeks ago is that having on the agenda a formal period for public comment, because it signals to the broader community that they're always welcome to come in and, give comments on the budget and, express concerns or, things that they would like to see. Because that's, all of you, I know you're all very open to that feedback and getting an understanding of what people want. So, signaling that that's an important part of this process was something that came out of that meeting that I think would be helpful and is just good with communication.
So
Generally.
to adopt that model, then would we model it after how the select board structures each session? So there would be an allocated 10 minutes of time for there to be any public comment specific to agenda, like to
We didn't talk about a specific amount of time. It was in the agenda, it says public input. It's right at the beginning. So if there is any, great. If not, not. That's it. It wasn't like if 3 people want to speak, then it's going to be longer than 10 minutes.
Well,
go ahead.
That's what I remember.
having just been on
Just
a
talk-
meeting today, I
yeah.
think that if there is going to be a public comment time, people should be limited to a specific, like,
Yeah.
no more than 2 minutes, because,
Yeah.
they can belabor themselves and then be here till 10.
3 is good.
2 to 3 minutes.
I like
away,
3.
Max,
3 is fast. Max.
max,
Then the hook.
done.
Okay, go ahead, Karen,
Jeff
go ahead.
also had a suggestion about meeting at the Village Cafe. What was that about?
I sent a note
Yeah.
right away to him and I
No, really?
might have got lost. I'll send another one.
Okay.
So hearing I think having an allocation of time with it versus, as we go through each discussion, having there be public feedback throughout each time. Again, I'm just wanting to be mindful of, I think we can have an allocation recognizing, and I think that's part of when we get through more of Audra's presentation, we know that there are areas that are going to require, for everyone's benefit, more community discussion and where the community is really thinking more about some of these areas. So I think we can look at what the schedule is and then say, it'll be 10 minutes for the meeting and then we can adjust as needed versus it. Because, does anybody else have any feedback on? Oh, you gotta put your microphone on. Yep.
I'm looking forward to the schedule. The next meeting is on March 5th, and I see the police and dispatcher are on the agenda.
We are going to look, it's on this draft agenda, but once we get through Audra's discussion, we are going to look at how we want to allocate time and so it's potentially that it will remain on for next week, but that's part of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure when to bring it up, but we already have scheduled March 10th as a evening for public discussion. And so it seems redundant, but
Yeah,
I'm just saying that if you run it in this order, you're going to have a lot of public comments.
that's really helpful to know. Yeah, so that's a perfect example of before we decide on our agenda that,
Yeah.
because I knew coming out of last week or the last select board meeting that there was going to be a public discussion date. So we want to make sure we're not, we want to be in line with what work the select board is doing to get public feedback. So that's a very helpful piece. Okay, that's all. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
All right. So, just key considerations as you go through it, just to help a little bit with level setting. So we talked about this a little bit, but trying to not think in terms of just this year. You have to vote on this year, but also trying to think about how is this going to set us up for the future and how do we build on some of the work that was done in prior years so that we're making progress towards those, the goals. Like, for example, infrastructure is one that's really important. So if we just kind of ignore some of the progress that was made in previous years, we can lose momentum on that. So just those are the sorts of things that we want to just keep a broader view of. Also, the town is primarily a service delivery organization, which means it's people that are performing services. So when there's any significant spending cuts or increases, it means that services are either cut or increased, which means people. So it's, you know, it's primarily about people who deliver these services. And, you know, as you go through, always asking yourself, you know, is this service important to the community and is it worth the cost that we're paying for it? So I think those are just really simple things to, you know, think about when you're evaluating all this. And we're going to talk about revenues, hopefully in more detail than we have in the past, but non-tax-based revenues, or fees for services that are paid by the actual users, can offset property tax impacts. But in practice, this can be really difficult because often we get pushback when, you know, residents who haven't traditionally had to pay for fees for certain services expect that it's going to be sort of embedded in their tax bill. So that can be difficult. So there are, you know, a number of departments like the harbor, public works, codes and planning, many others that have fees for services. And so all of you kind of like looking at that in the context of the overall budgetary impact and the policy decision around, you know, is this something that we want to subsidize through, you know, property taxes, or is this something that we want to make sure that, you know, we're covering it with a fee for that service? I think is a really important policy consideration for all of you with those particular areas. As you all know, we have a line item budget, so I'm not going to go into this too much because you're all familiar with it. We have the 5 distinct budgets, and this is something that I also got some feedback from the group a couple weeks ago that you'd like to go through in more detail, not just the general fund budget, but sort of the impact of the special revenue fund budgets like wastewater, the Snow Bowl, the Opera House, and the paid parking program. Because with all of those, there's a relationship between the general fund and those budgets. So sometimes the relationship, like for instance with general fund and wastewater, is that they share staff. So half of Dave St. Laurent's time, as well as our engineer and the administrative assistant, is shared between both public works and wastewater. So those, you know, those budgets have a relationship between one another. With the Snow Bowl, you know, last year, you're all familiar with the operational subsidy from the general fund that went into the Snow Bowl. So that's a direct relationship. With the Opera House, that, you know, the TIF that is also used for the general fund revenue is used to offset the special revenue fund of the Opera House. But there's also, you know, a subsidy from the town for certain projects or programs. And then the paid parking program, you know, the idea is that the revenue generated from that program is going to offset, you know, be an offsetting revenue to the general fund to lower the property tax impact. So, you know, all of these, even if they set outside of the general fund, have a relationship to it. And, you know, the group a couple of weeks ago was interested in understanding that relationship in more detail. And so I think that that's something that we'll spend more time on as we go through the budget, particularly because the difference between revenues from FY26 to this year is one of the major stories of the year in terms of the, you know, overall net increase. So, you know, some of the other important considerations, you know, we get a lot of grants and they're all treated as special revenue funds. So they're not included in the general fund budget. And a lot of that, you know, makes sense because they're discrete projects that they might have, you know, some sort of matching contribution from the general fund. But, you know, just to track the revenues and expenses related to all the grant funded projects, it would become impossible if we included them in the general fund budget. It'd be way too complicated. Also, Camden Public Library's budget is 50% privately funded and it sits outside of the general fund, but they give us a copy of that budget. So, you know, even though the contribution you see from the library that they're requesting through the general fund is only 50% of their budget, you're going to see their entire budget. And, you know, Christy will come in and talk about it and answer questions because one impacts the other. The school district and Knox County budgets, which make up 70% of the property tax bills, they're separate and they get added in as an assessment at the end. So even though it's a huge impact on your overall property tax bill, it's outside. And I know this is more for the folks at home than anyone in this room, outside of the purview of this committee, and done through a different budget process, which also you're all invited to attend the school. They send information about that. So that's something I can share with you all and put on the budget website as well as we go through all of this. And that's another thing, another little housekeeping thing that I should have kind of said at the beginning, but I forgot to. So as of tomorrow, we'll have the FY27 budget page on the website going live. So, as this information is published, it will be published on that web page. So if you lose your budget books or drop them in a puddle or something like that, you can always get that information on that area on the website. So and direct people towards it if they have questions that you can't answer.
Does it have a big draft watermark on it?
It
in
will.
It will.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And just some jargony things. So, we talk about TIFs a lot. So that's, tax increment financing district. Does anybody need a reminder of that, or is everybody good with TIF? And we can do more TIF stuff when we get to it. So that's, it's specific geographic area where the increased revenue from property taxes is set aside and has to be spent on very specific things that are in the development program.
What are the two TIF? It's downtown.
Downtown and then the highway. And the highway district is pretty much from kind of like Curtis Ave on Elm Street all the way up to, I believe it's like right before the Hannaford area, some of those parcels there. Yeah, I'll bring a map so that everybody can be familiar with it. But TIF is going to factor in very significantly into this budget because we're proposing to use a lot of this year's TIF revenue to offset expenses. And it's all expenses that are completely appropriate in the development program. We're just using it much more aggressively than we ever have in the past to reduce the overall, property tax impact. We'll talk about retiring debt. So this is when the town has completely paid off the principal on a bond or a note. And we have debt that's been pretty significant debt that's been retired this year from the demolition of the tannery in 2008, as well as upgrades that were made to the Rawson Avenue pump station around the same time, maybe a little bit after that. We talk about mill rate a lot, the rates that appear on tax bills that are denominated in millage rates. So it's, the tax per $1,000 of assessed value. And we'll get into the formula for that pretty soon. COLA, so the cost of living adjustments, wage adjustments to keep pace with inflation. So per the personnel policy, the town uses the federal Social Security index as of January 1st. However, the town and department heads, they agreed to reduce that slightly to bring us in at more closer to the target. So it's not a 2.8%, it's a 2.5%. So the surplus or the unassigned fund balance. So I have don't look at that number too much because we still need to get the audited number back. We don't have our FY25 audit completed yet. So best practice is to have enough funding available to sustain our operations for a 2-month period. And to meet this, we need to have roughly $2 million in our unassigned fund balance. And we probably have, closer to like 3.5 at this stage. It was quite an aggressive use of the unassigned fund balance last year. We're proposing to be much less aggressive this year to keep that fund balance healthy. But the impact of that is that you'll see on the revenue side, we had to make up a gap in order to make sure that the overall net increase was at a lower rate. So if you look at sort of budgetary impact on taxes, we talked about mill rate. So calculating the mill rate, it's the total amount of revenue that needs to be raised through property taxes to fund the school districts, the county assessments, as well as the municipal appropriations. So for FY25-26, that was $27.6 million. And so you take that number and gets divided by the total valuation, which last year was roughly $2.4 billion. And then you end up with your mill rate. So the tax rate per $1,000 of value, which was $11.36 last year. So, it's the impact on taxes, particularly what we're doing in this room is really, really tricky because, if you look at this pie here, the blue part is what you in this room are responsible for, which is about 28% of the tax bill. So it's really hard when you're working with 28% of the tax bill to have, a significant impact one way or the other. It requires, big decisions about services to be made if you want to have a significant impact. And, we can get into the next part of it. So, even pretty significant decreases in the tax rate require pretty significant cuts in expenses, or on the flip side of that, pretty significant increases in revenues. All right, so getting to high level, some of the challenges that we were looking at when we were developing the FY 26-27 budget. So growing expenses of maintaining infrastructure and facilities. So these costs really don't keep pace with inflation. They're just so above and beyond. And I think that anybody who's had to hire a contractor for anything is very familiar with that fact. And, we're a town, we have buildings to take care of, we have a lot of infrastructure to maintain. So it's just really difficult to come in at that 2.8% Social Security index increase when so much of what we do are activities that just don't keep pace with the rate of inflation. They're far, far higher. We have competing demands for increasing levels of services, yet lower spending. So we're always hearing you need to spend less, you need to decrease the tax burden. However, we have more demands for service than ever across more areas and more different things that people like to see us doing. So it's really hard to square those two things because they directly compete with one another. Also, the climbing utility and insurance rates. So these are other aspects of what we do that factor in really heavily, but they just don't keep pace with inflation like everything else. They increase at a much higher rate. And, just also, as we went through, just being very, very sensitive to, taxpayers and not wanting to impact people significantly in this year. So if you look at wages and benefits and how that, factors in for this year. So some of this is really, it shows an overall decrease. But
Is it in our book or is this just part of the presentation?
Oh, this is just part of the presentation. You would have to go through and analyze all of this.
Will you make this available?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is the kind of thing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll all be, we'll post it online and we'll play around with this because as we go through the budget process, you're going to want to, I think, see this
Side by side. Yeah.
side by side with the two different options that you're going to be considering. So, it's this year, we're showing an overall decreases in wages and benefits. If you look at the budget that I'm proposing, but that's because of a major change in service delivery. So that sort of, makes it harder to compare like to like from last year. So we did overall, we're budgeting for a 9% increase with health insurance. Wages, like we talked about, a 2.5% cost of living adjustment. And also with the addition of new employees, particularly public safety employees, we saw an increase in, retirement benefit costs. But you're seeing quite a major decrease because of the police department budget, which we'll talk about in the general overview. So to go through, significant changes kind of starting from the top, and it says FY 25 to 26, but it should say 26 to 27. So with the administration and finance budget, so that's where, you know, my office, all the staff that are in the finance office sit. Overall, there was a 1.5% decrease in that budget from the elimination of a part-time position. So probably none of you remember because it was a year ago. It used to be a full-time position, and we proposed last year to make it part-time. We had quite a few staff changes, retirements, and new people that were brought on. And in that, you know, in that change, we found that, you know, we were really doing quite well without hiring for that position. So for this budget, we're proposing to eliminate it completely. So the professional services budget. So this is sort of where the legal is like the largest component of this budget, but it's also, you know, other general sort of, you know, consulting services that we might hire for. And just the, you know, near past, we've used a lot of architectural services that we've funded out of this area. Before we had in-house engineer, we would have some engineering funds here. So for this year, it's a 24.8% increase, and that comes down to a number of different things. So one is bond counsel. So we have, you know, the approval from residents a few years ago for the major infrastructure bond that we have a bond anticipation note on. So instead of taking out the entirety of that that bond all at once, where, you know, we'd be paying on that in like a high rate on that interest from the get-go. Instead, we did a bond anticipation note. So we're able to take out money as we're spending it and only pay the interest on what we've spent. And eventually we're going to have to convert that into the long-term debt. And then we have some other, you know, borrowing from, you know, capital equipment purchases and other capital projects. So we're proposing that we have some funding available for financial planning in addition to the bond council. And then we still need to keep on funding some architectural services for some of these, you know, capital projects with facilities. So in the IT budget, that's showing a 10.1% increase. And this is driven almost entirely by increased licensing and service cost. No new sort of initiatives or service delivery model or expansions proposed, just sheerly increased costs of existing programs and services that we use. So planning, codes, and development, their budget is really just sort of wages and benefits. No substantive service changes are proposed. In the insurances budget, which includes, you know, workers' compensation or general liability insurance and unemployment, that's a 16.8% decrease. And that's only the case for that alternative model for police service delivery. So, you know, of course, if that's a service that we're contracting and we don't have, you know, employees associated with it, it lowers our workers' comp insurance premium. But also police departments are areas where your general liability insurance is increased because they carry firearms, and there's just a different sort of risk profile to those sort of employees and those sort of services. So for the town office building, there's a 62.1% decrease, and this is primarily due to allocating 25% of the Opera House director's wages to the budget due to some of the shared responsibilities between the Opera House building and the Opera House Auditorium Special Revenue Fund. With the police department, you'll see, and this is probably the biggest thing to pay attention to, and it'll be the biggest story of this year in terms of the budget. So I've given you sort of two options to look at. So on the department head column, you'll see sort of like a status quo. This is what the budget would look like if we, you know, if we kind of do what we do with the police department every year, no changes in service delivery. With the town manager's column, there'd also be no reduction in the level of service. However, the service model would change significantly And it would be a proposal to contract with the county to deliver dedicated law enforcement services. So, you know, it would be the same amount of police coverage or dedicated police coverage to Camden, just delivered through the county instead of our own police department. And so that, of course, would be a, you know, wage decrease as a result of that.
Audra, I have a quick question. So historically, and I think I've kind of asked myself this question going into it, you know, it's never been our privy to do any scrutinizing of the county budget. And so as I've kind of been listening to the select board meetings and kind of coming into this budget season, I've kind of asked myself for our group, how come that has never been something that we have talked about and thought about as part of services that we're paying for you know, in parallel with the police department. So even though I know you said with the school board and the county budget, is that something that we are going to be able to kind of bring in and better understand? Because again, I asked myself, like, why has that not been questions that we've had historically? And so I'm just raising it now that it's out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's going to be important context to this discussion because, you know, for example, with the county budget, so Camden, the way that the county funding works is it's not based on towns they don't pay based on their population, they pay on their assessed value. Camden has the highest assessed value of any community in Knox County, so we pay a higher proportion of county taxes than any other community. And when you look at the county budget, the sheriff's department is 78% of that. So for our 2.4 million that we pay to the county as our county assessment, 1.8 million of that, which is 78% of that, goes to the sheriff's department. So we're paying for those services. We just don't utilize them because we have our own police department, and we have we always have. So, you know, I think, is that the kind of thing that you think is important?
And my intention is not to jump ahead. I'm just wanting to recognize that budget number is not something new that has been introduced now. And I'm just raising it as I'm asking myself that question when I saw or heard that this is going to be part of this, is to just curious why that hasn't been something that we have not inquired about before, you know, and just been talking about. So it's really just to acknowledge it with zero opinion. Like I said, I just wanted to.
I do think it's important though, because in preparation for this and to make sure that everybody has all the information that you need to make a good decision, making sure that you have like a copy of their proposed budget for the upcoming year. Is that the kind of thing that would be helpful to all of you in terms of supplementary information?
For the Knox County, yeah.
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 Yes.
Everyone's nodding and saying, yeah.
Are we privy to what they, in terms of the county, what they would be offering? Because you were saying that we would get the same amount of service as we're getting, and so we were essentially paying for it twice. But what do we know about Knox County and how much they would actually be able to cover the town?
Yeah, and we can talk about that in detail when we talk about the contract for service. Really the answer is, if we're willing to pay for it, we can keep that level of service. And the number that you have, or what's in the budget here, is what that would look like to have a like-for-like level of service delivered.
Yeah, and as a citizen of Camden, there's a lot of discussion and thought to be had, and that's ongoing. I'm just, with my budget hat on, I just want to make sure that our group, with that lens, has the information we need to be thoughtful, both fiscally and service-wise, because otherwise it hasn't been clear historically as to what that potential is, and that I feel like is a shortfalling either on things we haven't asked or hasn't been presented. So.
Okay, so county dispatch, and onto the county again. So,
Was there a question online? Sorry. Oh, is there, would you mind checking the chat real quick?
it was probably me just putting something in the chat. It's not a question or anything you need to stop.
Well,
I'm just mentioning that the county has their own budget committee and they have a whole process. That's why it hasn't been discussed here very much. They have county commissioners and then they have a budget
Yeah.
committee.
yeah, and a good process thing, just because Allison, I know everything is valuable. If there is a chat, let's make it so that we can all, yeah, it'd be good to just I'll try to keep an eye if there is something in there and then we can bring it in. Because that is helpful information, just to be aware of. So, and I've been good. I have my phone turned over, so I'm just,
Yeah.
anyway.
All
Okay,
right,
go ahead.
and so back to significant changes. So the county dispatch, which that's all done through both the county budget process and also the Knox County Regional Communications Center. They have a advisory group. So that's a 44.6% increase over FY26. Fire and EMS, that would be a 14.7% increase. And that's due to the phased in hiring of 2 additional full-time firefighter EMT positions to strengthen capacity and service continuity down there. For the public safety building, a 10.9% increase, and that's really just higher utility and supply costs. The hydrant assessment is going up 8.8%, and that's really higher water rates. Streetlights, 7.1% increase for higher electricity rates. With public works, that's a proposed 18.3% increase. The most significant story there is the paving line in the budget. So, as long as I've been here, which is close to 10 years now, and I think it was long before that, it was a $275,000 budget, and that number hasn't changed yet. The price and cost of pavement and paving has gone up. Oh, geez. Yeah, we're falling behind, like significantly falling behind. So, in order to make sure that we're able to maintain our roads to a point where, we're not seeing deterioration of pavement that, forces us to do like a full-on rebuild of some of these roads, we really need to up the amount of paving that we're doing to, sort of keep pace with that deterioration. So for community and cultural services, the provider requests have decreased by 15.8%. That's really just due to some of them not putting in requests this year. The library is proposing an 8% increase. Harbor is decreasing by 1.4%, and this is just largely due to the former chamber building. There was some funding that was put into maintaining that last year that will decrease because of some work being done on that building, as well as shifting public restroom staffing to the Parks and Recreation budget. The Opera House budget is a 13.3% increase. It's worth noting that's fully offset by TIF revenue. The cemetery maintenance budget is increasing by 4.6%, but that's also fully offset by cemetery trust fund revenue. For the Parks and Rec department, there's a 16.6% increase proposed. So we talked about this last year. There was a request for 2 full-time positions. There was one given, and this is the second one that's being asked for again. And this is really, after the redevelopment, there were much more intensive maintenance needs out at the Snow Bowl. So we had all kinds of new electrical, mechanical equipment, much larger trails and stormwater issues that needed to be attending to, but the staffing was never increased accordingly. So they've just found it completely impossible to sort of keep up with the year-round maintenance demands that resulted from the redevelopment. So this is really kind of trying to right-size staffing in a slow, deliberate way. In a tight budget year like this, we don't want to frivolously increase staffing, but these are really positions that if we kind of kick it off longer, we're gonna be paying the consequence down the line. With debt service, both the principal and interest are decreasing by 9.2% and 6% respectively. A lot of this is from the retirement of the Tannery and Rawson Avenue debts, but there's There's also sort of new debt coming on from both capital equipment and some capital projects. That's why it's pretty modest. So capital reserves, there's a 10.7% decrease. So we're just proposing to not fund as many reserve accounts this year. And then capital improvements in general, it's an 86.8% decrease over last year, because we're only proposing essential capital equipment purchases only. We have a lot of, current projects that we're working through, as well as, just wanting to be sensitive to the fact it's a difficult year. So where that puts us overall is a net increase of 3.89% over FY26. So the expenditures budget in all, so all expenses, we're proposing a 14.5% decrease over FY26. So we have decreased overall spending from last year. But the reason why the net increase is at almost 4% is because of revenue decreases by about 30.43%. And a lot of this is because I am not proposing to aggressively use unassigned fund balance as we did last year in order to keep our fund balance healthy. So that's the major reason why revenues are down so much over FY26, and why we have a overall net increase even though our expenses are decreasing. So that's the very high level.
This is great. And you must, what really helped me is and I know it makes it, I'm a numbers guy, so if you could say the capital improvement decrease 86.8%, and underneath that you wrote $1 million. And the Opera House increase is 13.3%, and it was $53. Because I don't know how significant that 13% is, or the 4% is. I don't know what kind of numbers we're talking about. They're
So how about when?
Which we'll get to.
But how about when I put this online? Because that's very easy for me to do. It's very, very easy.
It adds up maybe some spacing, but.
Yeah. So when I put this online,
That
I
would
can
be
create
so
another
cool.
column and
Because
give you
then we
dollar value.
can, and when we get and we can reference it and go, yeah, okay, I'm getting this now.
Yes. More than happy to do. That's very easy.
Thanks.
And and again, this has come up in some years past. If there were asks, I guess we'll see it between what was proposed from the town, from the department heads, and then yours. So if there were capital improvements or things that were proposed by departments that we'll see that
Yes.
differentiate. We'll be able to differentiate and know what was accounting for that, and then bring it into discussion if we so feel like it.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And, there are definitely huge differences between department head. I mean, not in all cases, but there are differences between the department head budget and the budget that you'll see proposed from the town manager this year that are more significant than in years past.
Deb, you had your hand up online.
Yeah, because Audrey, your final numbers really reflect adoption of the new policing model, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So that feels like a big if.
Yes, absolutely a big if.
And can you just talk a little bit about your incentive without getting into the details of wanting to do that? Was that to reduce the increase in the overall budget? Is that where this is coming from? Or did you really think we needed a new model of policing?
I think that we had a big leadership change with the department. So, when you have a big leadership change, it presents a really good opportunity to assess what you're doing. We've had, a lot of feedback from the community about concerns with cost increases and a desire to, see if there are creative or different ways that we can look at service delivery models to bring down those costs, not just in, 1 year, but moving forward. And, a lot of calls to regionalize services that can be regionalized. So, when you're in a situation where you've had, sort of a major change in a department that's coinciding with a really tight budget year. It just presented an opportunity to say, this is something that we should really have a discussion about as a community. Like, what's the more important value? Is it, reducing the tax burden and working in collaboration with our partners across the region? Or is it, sort of local control and the identity that having our own police department brings? So, I think that this is an important time for Camden to have a conversation about those values and which kind of rises to the top as being our most important values. And I don't think that there's a wrong answer with any of this. I think it's just about what's most important to people at the end of the day as a community. What's going to end up being, most important to Camden in terms of how police services are delivered. So I think that having this conversation in the context of the budget is really important, particularly where it's just becoming impossible to bring in those sort of like single figure budget increases that we've all become accustomed to in years past. Like, everything that we do does not keep pace with, the rate of inflation. It's much higher than that. And everybody knows that, we've really, everyone has struggled with inflationary pressures in the past years. And it's only going to keep getting to be more pronounced. So, I think that this year is a good year to have that conversation, because, if we didn't do something different, we would be looking at a double-digit increase with a bunch of other, cuts and sacrifices that we've already made. So, and maybe at the end of all of this, everyone decides that is a worthwhile thing to do. And I think that's a completely legitimate decision for you all to make. I just wanted to give you multiple options.
And Deb, I think I appreciate the question, and I think the timing is, it's the timing in terms of our budget discussions. It's very timely, obviously, because of that. But I also want to make sure that, and this may be a good time to think about when we want to have that be presented to the budget committee, because I want to work in unison and well coordinated with the select board and the type of community outreach that's happening, so that, again, I'm not saying we're not really compartmentalizing altogether, but there are questions we might want to ask as, members of Camden, and then there's also then conversations we want to have from from the budget committee perspective. And I want to give us an opportunity to ask the questions that we have, listen to the feedback that we're getting, and then also make sure that in our sessions specific to the budget committee that we're scrutinizing and having the conversations relevant to the budget itself and those questions. So it's kind of all in unison. So did you have a question, Matt?
I did. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
I think we'd all agree that the police budget decision might be the most important, if not, for this budget cycle, right? If we were to break it down, it's a three-dimensional chess kind of decision. So is there an opportunity to allow for, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of public comment that day. It sounds like there's going to be a presentation that might need more time to review and prepare questions than the rest of them, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess, without being long-winded, is there opportunity or allotment in our schedule and timeline to give more time to the decision-making process of the police contract, essentially?
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be next. We're not going to do it next week. Yeah,
But we're going to start. We started next week at the beginning, right? And but we shouldn't vote on it. That's sort of what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Put your mic on, though.
I thought what Sarah was saying was that we let the select board have their public discussion. Isn't there going to be something at the select board meeting about this topic
Yeah, you said
next week?
no.
10th, March 10th.
I think there's a public.
Yeah.
Ken, what was the
Then
date
March
of the
March 10th.
March?
So then maybe we can discuss it the following couple days later on Thursday.
For sure, but like it would be great if we could get all of the information and initial
Yes.
presentations out of the way
Yes.
first.
Yes.
We can take the additional time to do. That would be
100%.
great if we could
And-
spend several weeks,
100%.
whatever, discussing
Yeah,
that.
I think we would, right. And so to your point, I was thinking in addition to when we actually do the deeper dive from a budget scrutinizing, questioning perspective, we also say there is a meeting on March 10th. And that, and are there meetings and things that we want to, as a committee, again, we're not obligated to attend those, but they're just to start to kind of build that
Because of
feedback.
that,
Go ahead.
it would be nice if we could almost establish that we won't be voting on it. It won't be the appropriate time to call a vote for it when they present. And when do we want to, and then should we determine the voting date for it sort of after the 10th? Should we put that into a specific session that we've got on the calendar that would fall after, so we know that that vote's going to be there?
I mean, my perspective or proposal, I would say was, I mean, I was eyeballing the March 19th.
Right.
You know, and I was like, okay, we can, if we potentially could do IT and the harbor, you know, and kind of bring some of those pieces up. I think we talk about, oh, I see, because you have police, this is different than the one I saw earlier. I'm locking it in right now to that. Yeah, so, yeah, my proposal would be that we swap those so that the public comment can happen and
And then we put the police at the front of that 19th meeting because you know it's going to take.
I was thinking, well, in the way that it has been redefined, even with Audra, it is fully allocated to police and dispatch.
cool.
And then if we find that we have just, we're hunky-dory, you know, then we can always bring it. We never tend to have the problem of needing to bring other things in. We can vote on more, we can review more stuff if needed. I think it's allocated,
great. No, that's
it's its own thing. Yeah, Allison, go ahead.
Just in terms, I'm scrambling, looking for the information about this March 10th meeting. And maybe I missed something. I see in my email, Susan saying there's a joint budget committee select board meeting in the Opera House auditorium to discuss this. Is that what we're talking about here?
I haven't been in, the first I heard of the meeting was just from Ken sitting here, so there's nothing that's been
Well, I
formally.
agree. Allison has the same description than I do, that it's a joint meeting.
Okay,
So-
we just I just hasn't been anything that's come to the budget committee yet, so I was
Yeah.
not aware of
I
it.
don't have an email about it. I don't remember a discussion about it or.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, I just, if there is, could
we do-
members of the select committee
Tell us.
present tell us what it means to have that joint meeting and if that's going to be the case or not?
Right.
So it's
I mean,
it's
I'm on the
early,
select board and I
from what
don't
I
know.
understand, early days of trying to set that all up, to be in the Opera House to, you know, if there's a lot of people that want to attend. And, you know, it would just be sort of the initial discussion about it.
Got it. Okay. So maybe I could just recap because I want to make sure I understand. So our cadence for this there will be an initial presentation on the schedule like we have. That's the next meeting coming up, right? We will hear the presentations from police and dispatch.
Let me say it slightly differently based on what I'm trying to understand. If there is a joint session
Mhm.
that we want to make sure that we all would be able to attend and or watch if we can't attend, is the understanding that at that joint session, the same presentation that would be coming to us is what's going to be put out to the community so that we can,
So
Or-
again, because this is all kind of new and I don't really know
Okay.
the details yet. My understanding it was to get community input and feedback.
okay.
So it's kind of like, you know, this is all difficult to figure out what goes when.
Okay.
So I'd like to suggest a what goes when then.
I'd love you to suggest.
Okay,
yes,
great. That's
please.
sort of what I'm
You-
putting to a vote. I mean, like I'm going to
Put it to a
suggest this
vote.
and then we
Please,
can put
go
it to a
for
vote. So by the time we're scheduled to have our first meeting, because this is such a decision, I would hope that police and dispatch and whoever's responsible that has their presentation ready to go and can submit it to budget committee, a select board, whoever, you know, needs to see it to be able to review it and we're not there. We're here to hear the initial presentation. They can come up and give it to us. We will listen to it. We will gather questions. It's not a time for us to like hammer with questions or give opinion or anything. We're just intaking. Then we will have subsequent time. They will give the same presentation theoretically at that joint meeting. I don't expect anything to actually get done at the joint meeting because it's going to be a lot of voices and a lot of noise. And so we can all have our questions in ahead of time if we want to pool our budget committee questions so that we're organized going into that meeting. That would be what I'm suggesting. And then coming out of that meeting, we've heard public opinion. We've had plenty of time to think over the plan, which theoretically hasn't changed between the beginning of March and now the middle or end of March. And then we can come together in an appropriate budgetary committee meeting and make a vote.
So that would be March
gotta
5,
do
March
your
10, and
microphone.
March 12. Right.
March 5, March 10, March 19th, I believe.
I
Sarah,
think the 19th was on my schedule.
Or whatever the dates are, but we have this,
New
the
and
first day,
person on
then the middle is the big meeting, and then we come out and we have our own.
I was just trying to.
Ken,
get the date.
Ken
Yeah,
has
no,
a-
I agree.
Hold on.
Perfect. I agree. I just don't know.
so.
Just one
I
sec. So
would-
Ken, go ahead, and then Allison, you may have a question.
Yes, I would suggest that it's redundant to have the same presentation on the 5th and the 10th.
Right, so you're.
I think, why don't you delay any discussion on the police until the 10th?
No, Ken, I'd like to disagree because
I
we
heard-
will
I
be,
heard you.
understand, but it's not redundant because it's only redundant for us. The
Yeah.
public will not hear it at the first.
Yeah.
On the 5th.
You're assuming nobody comes on the 5th.
You're assuming that everybody comes on the 5th.
I don't
Allison, you
know.
have a question online, and I have a follow-up to what Matt and Ken are both saying, but go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I liked a lot of what I just heard from Matt. I think let's be careful not to, the select board really hasn't discussed exactly what this March 10th meeting would look like. And so I think not just trying to wait until this, the idea of holding off on discussing it until this March 10th meeting where everything is going to be revealed concerns me a little bit because I'm not sure that's the right venue for it. So
Yeah.
I like what I heard from Matt, I think, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure we have all the details of the March 10th meeting nailed down.
I think
Anyway.
for continuity for the budget committee, and again, if the public chooses to watch that session, it can only add to the value of what they're gonna then be discussing in a public comment forum. But I am in agreement that if we reserve our session to hear and in this setting, what is being presented, and then we can then, however the public session manifests, be part of that or listen to it or what have. Yeah.
Again, I think redundancy is a good
Right, we need the redundancy.
decision to
Yeah.
hear the numbers several times if we're
And then we-
afforded that
yeah,
opportunity is
yeah.
a luxury.
And it just gives us an opportunity to get that input in the setting in which that we are holding the fiscal lens here. And then we also have the opportunity to then be present in whatever the session is that will be more for public forum. And then we can hold any vote following that. I mean, go ahead, Karen. Oh,
I have a quick budget question for Audra. Is it possible to do, you did the budget statement overall of 3.8% if we went ahead and did the police service type change. Is it possible to also give us the number of what it would be if it was situation normal for the police department?
yeah, that was
Yeah,
gonna be my
it'd be
question as well. I
14
appreciate that. That's a good-
14%.
Didn't hear him.
Yeah, no, yeah, but the question that was just asked was one I was also going to ask is that in parallel of having the two models so that we can see what the total increase would be if it was not an altered model or a revised model. And you were saying, what was, and it'd be good to have that in writing as well.
Yeah. It's 14%.
Okay,
We're rounded up to 14%.
okay. Yeah.
13.8.
So, go ahead.
All right, this obviously, because you can see what's happening here, this is going to be a very complicated, controversial conversation. At the end of the day, the vote is only under the checkbox for the select board. If the budget committee decides something different, they don't really get an opportunity for the public to say, we prefer what the budget committee says as opposed to the select board. So I'd like to suggest that at the voting booths, it goes back to the way it used to be, where you could vote for the select board budget or the budget committee budget. Because right now, if you just vote for the select board budget and say no, it goes back to last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that could get messy. And I think it would be clearer for the public if they could choose the select board or the budget suggestion.
That's a really good point, and I think that's why this needs more discussion, so if
Yeah.
we could do the
There's,
vote
I mean,
on
there's
structure.
legal
Hmm?
reasons why we can't do that.
I
Is
have,
what?
Legal reasons why we can't do that.
how about we say that prior to us,
Legally, we can't do that? We used to. Why can't we do it anymore? Oh, yeah, we
Never,
did
never
for
on,
years.
no, never on ballot voting, straight up or down.
so if Audra, if you could take that as an action so that before we're through our final, because that, scenarios like that with other bigger,
Not on the ballot.
ticket items,
Okay.
but
Town meeting, you could do it.
a town meeting, yeah, okay. So ultimately, I'm going to reiterate what we think. So are we comfortable with proceeding with the department presentation? In which case, I mean, right now it's proposed for March 5th, where we would have police and dispatch without discussion from our groups. On the 5th, we will get more clarity, hopefully, pretty soon. And Courtney, I see your hand up. Let me just finish my thought, and then I'll recognize you. We will get more clarity around what the public select board, if it's truly a joint select board budget committee, then I definitely want clarity, because I do want to, again, understand what our role would be in that. That's proposed for the 10th. And then we would allocate, and then maybe, I don't know if Audra, you have a recommendation, or maybe you take that offline thing, and then we would allocate for when we would actually have discussion and voting. Obviously following the 10th and then prior to this. Does that summarize? And Courtney, let me turn to you.
Last year, when we decided to have all of the town vote on the snowball stuff, specifically like the groomer and all that stuff, would this type of vote be able to go to the town to be like, do we want to get rid of it? Do we not? Or is that not how the process would work? Like, I know that people can come and participate here and at the select board meetings, but in terms of actually like getting rid of it or keeping it, would that be a town vote? Or is it just done here?
It's really done when, through people voting on the budget at town meeting. So
the
it's,
budget would determine that we go with the sheriff or we stay with the police. It couldn't be a separate line item in the ballot saying, do you agree to go with the sheriff's department? Couldn't that be a separate item?
so I've been.
I mean, not
I've-
so much.
I don't
the money
want to
part.
get too much into
Sure.
this, because I've been talking, the town attorney and I have been trying to figure this out, because this was one of the first questions asked.
Yeah.
So I don't
I think it's hard to
have-
modify the ballot.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm aware of the fact that a citizens committee is going to do a petition to have it on the vote, do a vote. So it may come to that anyway. I don't know how they're proceeding. They need to get a certain amount of signatures and working on that, but there are people that are concerned and working on that.
And then again, so that's even more reason, and to Matt's point, that I think if we proceed, if everyone's comfortable with it, we get our presentation for budget committee purposes, we let March 10th evolve as it will, and then we will allocate a time to actually for discussion and voting. And then we will continue to be informed in terms of how and, it will appear on the ballot. Ultimately, we're presenting to the select board. The select board is choosing to or to not, go with what our recommendations are, and then that's what gets put on the ballot. So-
And the one thing I should add is in the citizens petition that will come to the select board, and they will make a decision whether or not to put it on the ballot or not.
So,
Is there a way could we make that meeting specifically instead of 6 to 8? Could we have it be like 5 to 8? I don't know what everybody's schedules are or whatever, but I just feel like 2 hours probably won't.
well, I
Yeah.
think if we're not having discussion on the 5th as well, if it's for the
That's
presentation,
informational, you mean?
if it's informational for us to kind of get our heads wrapped around it, I think actually it might be that it might not even need a full 2 hours if we're truly like allowing it to be kind of, we're digesting what the information is. I think we might end up having to need some extra time at a later meeting though, Courtney, depending upon what comes up. So I guess I'm going to leave it to maybe getting feedback from you and others of how long those sessions are needed if it's sans a budget, vote and detailed discussion. And then Allison, I see just a comment popped up. Do you want to read that? Because I couldn't read it even if I had glasses on.
It says this can be flagged as a future conversation
Yeah.
/ assignment for town staff to review options for asking the question depending on what is learned. Maybe there are options in the middle of both options. We haven't even had a presentation yet, so we haven't may not know how to
Okay.
frame the question.
Okay. Again, I don't think this is a vote worthy. I think we are going to proceed with keeping then the department presentations on. And then again, we will await feedback on whether it could be that plus anything else. And
So I think, for the police department discussion, there'll be 2 presentations. So one, I'd like to have the current officers come in and give a presentation. And then the sheriff can come in and give a presentation about the contract. And then everybody's here to answer any questions that you all have. So I think, that's kind of like the basic outline of how that would go. Anything additional you all think would be helpful, or parameters that you want to set so it goes a certain way, I think would be good for you to all think about.
I think at this stage, like, we don't know what we don't know, and because we haven't, again, having just gotten the binders
Yeah.
and not
Right.
seen, I think if there's anything related to the Knox County budget that would be important or relevant or sweet, and again, that might all I'm assuming that's going to come with the presentations that will be had, so.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions online? Matt, do you have one?
No, I mean, it's separate from this.
Okay,
It's just
good.
for Audra.
We're good. Oh, you're agreeing, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah. You had mentioned in your earlier presentation that there were going to be, or it was in a letter, was it a document, about a number of non-recurring revenues used this year. Do
Yep.
you have a schedule of those?
Of the non-recurrings? Yeah. And it's not that the only ones that are not being used at all this year are financing. It's all the financing that we did for projects from last year, of course, that, offset that expense. We are going to be financing, a few capital equipment purchases. We're still using surplus, just not to the same extent that we did last year. And then, using the TIF to a greater extent this year than we did last year.
Mhm.
So it's, the non-occurrings are really just for the capital purchases.
So I just wanted to play.
Yeah, I can give you the whole.
So full disclosure, Jody has done a bunch of work over the last year in helping us fill in some data into a financial model. So last time around, we talked about this a little bit. The town purchased for us a nice model that other towns use. It's called MuniCast. We did some due diligence and some selection on it. It was the right tool. And we spent some time loading in a lot of data to it, all the information from the special funds and the general fund, and some actuals and some operationals. And we now have the ability to look forward. So the situation for us is, as we start to think about these decisions that we're going to make, it's going to allow us to model it out and see what the impact of those decisions will be 2, 5, 10 years from now. Because in my experience on the last several years with Budget Committee, we tend to look at everything kind of differently, where we may look at a $50,000 equipment purchase for police or fire, sort of in like this over scrutinized manner, because it's tactile to us and we can put our brains in what it means and what it means right now. But we may let a $2 million bond issue and sail right through because the payback period seems reasonable and there's not a lot of cost and it's got to get done, right? And so I think now we'll have some framework and some ability to sort of model all that out and think about, is this the right time to do that versus something else as opposed to just sort of going by feel.
So then, I'm so glad that work has been put in. So then for this round of budget, will there be that feedback as we're going through those budgets?
That's what I hope to provide. That's why
That's
I'm like,
great.
if you can send me the schedule, I know exactly
Yeah.
which
Yep.
things I can sort of model that out.
Yep.
And see if it flags essentially.
That'd
right?
be fantastic. I think that would be incredibly valuable because sometimes I know we've all had said at some point, we feel like we're making some, we're trying not to make just arbitrary, decisions and how does it actually impact? So I think that's great. Okay, we're at the 15-minute mark before 8:00. Look at us. I know that when you did this revision, I wasn't sure, but I'm so glad, like the time and allocation to kind of sort through how we want the scheduling. We did think about potentially doing the general government, but my question is, do we want to kick off next week with doing the general government and then the police dispatch, or do we want to and not tackle that tonight? Originally, it was just going to be the introduction, but I wasn't sure how long we would need for it.
Let's go home.
We're going to leave. Okay. So
Kick the can.
only again, I think we can effectively shift the can to the next meeting. Any other comments, feedback, hopes, dreams, worries, aspirations for,
Just confirming, Audra,
Here, just do the microphone because that's what we do.
just confirming, Audra, you're adding the numbers online and printout too, so we can have in our binders?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is also what the model's going to help us with, right? So if I can just get Audra's, that it'll pull sort of those line items and then it'll automatically calculate it. And we'll have it. I mean, please do it because then we
Oh,
can
yeah, yeah.
check it against yours, right? But hopefully that'll allow. So a lot of these questions where we can just input proposed budget and sort of look at it against previous years and also pull in, other national averages. Sometimes I hear a lot of times sometimes we get also twisted up
Other
around
folks.
Yeah, I mean, just generally, right? Like, and I think the benefit of this too is going into sort of larger public conversations is we're sort of a function for the public, right? And so as my thought towards bringing something like this into our process is to also enable some more financial transparency to the community about how we make decisions. It's not a bias or a gut, and like we're trying to practice fiscal responsibility because these costs, I mean, if you look at the increases, like look at these increases across the board, like regardless of what, the base is it $1 million? Is it $50,000? Is it $5? Everything is multi-digit increases every year now. We're way outpacing inflation. We're way outpacing our tax base. We're way outpacing our ability to generate revenue. And so part of this is trying to think about like, how do we deal with that, right? We're not going to just be able to cut things and make this balance going forward completely. That's not enough, right?
But then when we try to we introduce, like, talk about paid parking, which is something that would maybe not immediately, but by next year at least, add revenue, and everyone's up in arms. It's always been free. Why do I have to pay for it now?
And I think that's
right.
I think that's and hopefully we can find narrative that's that's data based, right? That show the impact of that, and people don't say it's frivolous or it doesn't work, or we can show where it's offsetting specific costs in the actual application. Because like this summer, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the snowball and its value to the community and whether it has financial impact or not.
Right.
I can tell you the eye test this year, after watching what happened with the Toboggan Festival, you know, I would love to try and measure how much financial impact that had. You know,
What happened with the what?
the
Toboggan.
U.S. Toboggan, like
Okay.
the town was packed. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the hotels were probably packed,
Yeah.
the restaurants are packed, and for a week or two on either side. So, you know.
No, I think that's all.
Need one in the summer.
Right.
I think all of it is super, I think all of it's super valuable. I just want to add just from a,
You can have a month, I think, right? You have a month.
Well, the
I just
whole
want,
summer's
hold
like
on one
Toboggan
second.
Nationals.
Just 1 sec. So and I think just from again, because we love our process, discussions, I just want to, I'm a kind of call it out as it is, recognizing that there is a sensitive, impactful debate going on in our community. I am feeling optimistic that with the group that we have, that we're going to be able to have thoughtful discussions and again, bring forward, again, I'm all about compartmentalizing the different questions that I have, but really being, carrying on thoughtful discussions that are going to bring to light for us and then hopefully in turn for the select board and beyond, the kind of information that is really important. And again, and appreciative, bringing forward proposals that look at scrutinizing and assessing what is potentially, fiscally responsible, may not outweigh what the town ultimately wants to have. But I do think that there is value in just having those conversations. And I think with this group and, it'll be a thoughtful and respectful process. So I just appreciate it. So
I have a bit of a random.
I like
before
random.
my name. Can you remind me, Audra, about state law percentage increase? Have to have a separate vote?
Oh, that's repealed.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's gone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions online?
LD1.
Going once, going twice? Okay, are we, anyone want to care to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Or
Okay.
Ask you, why didn't you?